Can we already put several of the Sun Belt swing states in Trump's column? Michael Snyder reports. We shouldn't read too much into the early voting results, but the numbers that we have gotten so far are so different from what we witnessed in 2020 that they are impossible to ignore. 4 years ago, Democrats completely and utterly dominated the early voting period, and many of the experts expected the same thing to happen again in 2024. But that is not what we're seeing. Instead, early voting for the Democrats is down, and early voting for the Republicans is way up. More than 51 million people have already voted, and the data that we have about those votes is quite startling. For example, just look at what's happening in North Carolina. For the first time ever, Republicans actually have a lead during the early voting period. More than 3 million people have already voted in early voting in North Carolina, which can be done via mail-in, absentee ballot, or via in-person locations around the state. Republicans, interestingly, for the first time ever, actually lead the early vote. North Carolina provides the partisan breakdown and demographic data on early voters in the state, something they have done now for more than a week. This remarkably consistent GOP lead has shocked political observers and comes as demographic data also suggests Democrats face serious issues in competing at the top of the ticket in the state. Black voter turnout is down approximately 3% from 2020, and about 1% more men than women as compared with 2020 are voting in the state. This was not supposed to happen. Democrats were supposed to build a lead during early voting that the Republicans would try to chase down on Election Day, and many had been anticipating that turnout in the areas of North Carolina that were absolutely devastated by Hurricane Helene would be way down during the early voting period, but instead turnout is actually way up. A record-breaking 2.8 million people in North Carolina have cast early ballots, with tens of thousands of those votes coming out of the storm-ravaged West. As of last week, voters in the 25 counties in the FEMA-designated disaster area submitted a 0.5% more ballots than they had in 2020. One couple that lives in a part of the state that was hit recently really hard by Hurricane Helene said that they would crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump. While traveling through the state early this month, I was told by Victorian William McKinley from weather-beaten Beach Mountain in Avery County that they would crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump. That's what we pollsters call voter intensity, a possible indication of the silent majority stirred to action. I just looked up the latest early voting numbers from North Carolina, and at this stage, Republicans have a lead of more than 30,000 votes. Democrats, 1,024,379, that's 33%. Republicans, 1,059,073, that's 34.1%. It looks like Democrats will have to try to come from behind on Election Day, and that may be impossible to do. That may explain why the Harris campaign has decided to cancel $1.7 million in ads in the state. Democrat presidential nominee Vice President Kamala Harris is waving the white flag in North Carolina, surrendering the state to former President Donald Trump as her campaign withdraws nearly $2 million in planned ads buys from television stations statewide 1 week before the election. The more than $1.7 million in canceled ads by the Harris's campaign in North Carolina suggests that her team believes, given polling data and early vote data, that the Tar Heel state is no longer in play for her. Meanwhile, Republicans actually expanded their unprecedented lead in the state of Nevada on Monday. Monday's numbers gave another large boost to Republicans, increasing their statewide ballot lead over Democrats to 40,000 or 5.7%. This has never happened, not even close, in the Reid machine era. 700,000 ballots have now been posted, so at least half the vote is in, perhaps a little more, and some trends seem to be embedded after 10 of 14 days. Note that Tuesday of the second week also has traditionally been a good day for Republicans in-person early voting. Mondays followed the 2020 pattern, with the GOP plus 4,000 result actually slightly better than 2020. And in Arizona, Republicans have built up a 7-point lead in ballots cast during early voting. In Arizona, it's even bleaker for Democrats, Republicans returning nearly 42% of the statewide early ballots by Monday, compared to just over 35% from Democrats and 23% from independents. This represents nearly a 9-point swing in the GOP's favor from the 2020 election. I don't see any way that the Harris campaign can make up the deficit. The Sun Belt swing states are slipping away, and so Harris needs to focus on a northern strategy. At this point, Harris is going to have to sweep Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then hold on to New Hampshire, Virginia, Minnesota, and Colorado. Yes, I know that nobody is really talking about Colorado, but I think that is actually in play. In fact, I think that a lot of blue states will be a lot closer than most people think. The Trump campaign clearly has a momentum at this point, and this is being reflected in the betting markets. Kamala Harris's chances of winning the election have reached a new low in the betting markets. The Democratic nominee has dropped below 40% in all 6 betting markets monitored by Real Clear Politics. The markets include Polymarket and BetOnline. All sorts of pundits are saying all sorts of things about why the Harris campaign is doing poorly, but ultimately it's very simple. When the economy is doing well, the incumbent party tends to do well. When the economy is doing poorly, the incumbent party tends to do poorly. Needless to say, the economy is doing very poorly right now. It's going to take something extremely, extremely unusual for Kamala Harris to win this election. But we still have about a week to go until Election Day, and so there's plenty of time for more surprises. This is by Michael Snyder on End of the American Dream. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. About the author, Michael Snyder's new book, Why, is available on paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. He's also written 8 other books available on Amazon, including Chaos, End Times, 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecy of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of Michael's books, you help to support the work that he's doing. You can also get his articles by email as soon as he publishes them by subscribing to his Substack newsletter. Michael has published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and The Most Important News, and he always freely, happily allows others to republish those articles on their own websites. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, we strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.